Our schedule is upset.
Nice little design.
Okay. Well, tonight we are supposed to talk about work happiness. Does it seem like an oxymoron? Not really. And Keshav just said, well, if you're happy with what you do, it isn't work. Which is basically the whole essence of it. Essence of karma yoga, essence of all happiness in the world. But specifically work. There's things that are always going to come up in work that will be troublesome, that will cause you difficulty. And how do you get past those? Most of you were downstairs when I told the story about our grease trap. Hated that job. And our senior nun, we don't do what we like what we do. That was 40 years ago, 45 years ago. Now I was in a very expensive boutique in Montecito where we live, and they had a keychain and it says, love what you do, do what you love. And I thought, really? But think about it. Why do you get unhappy at work? What makes you unhappy about work? Do you feel frustrated? Do you get anxiety about it, meeting the schedule? What makes you unhappy? Or do you get irritated with the people that you have to deal with? Big one, huh? So how do we get past anger, frustration, irritation, to a place where we can do our work quite happily, easily, and efficiently? It's our choice. We can choose to be irritated, to concentrate on the people who we're working with and see all the negative things that they're doing. Or we can choose to do our work and let them be who they are. There are certain situations, because I know we had some students and graduate students in Los Angeles who were working on identifying the DNA that caused Alzheimer's. The specific, whatever you call it, she was into nanobiology, which I never understood. But anyway, she identified it. She did find the exact marker that marks DNA, chromosome that is Alzheimer's. Did she get credit for it? Mm-mm. Not at all. Because she had some very aggressive co-workers who took all the credit. And she was extremely frustrated and angry and disappointed, felt like she had been used, and was very unhappy at work. And then she decided, does it really matter who gets the credit for this? Or is the important thing finding the chromosome that marks the Alzheimer's, so that we can start finding a cure for it? So her method of dealing with was, she quit that job. She got out of that lab because she said, I was really unhappy working with these people who, instead of cooperating, were very cutthroat, aggressive people. But she said, I was still very happy with my work. I had done what I set out to do, and it didn't matter who got credit. And she's now working in Washington, D.C., not in Los Angeles, and she's very happy with her job. So that's one way you can deal with work unhappiness. I don't know, it takes a great deal of maturity and a great deal of self-searching to deal with it that way. I'm not sure how many people would do that. Many people would go and try and, fight for their recognition. But she did the work she loved. She got the result that she wanted. She just didn't, her ego did not get credit for it. And yes, it impacted her income, not to get the credit. But she found a job she adores. So even as there's an old Sufi saying that said, every wall can be a door. So when you think you're up against a brick wall, look for the door in it. See how you can get through it. You know who else goes by that saying? Michael Jordan. He said that he always says that to himself, every wall can be a door. And sometimes you can just jump over them. You don't have to even find the door in the wall. He can.
For Michael Jordan, that's easy.
Yeah. So, but I mean, if we all find something that we can encourage ourselves with when we get frustrated, angry, let's see, I have a list. Yeah, okay. Unhappiness, frustration, self-centeredness, guilt, shame, anger, envy. All of these things make us unhappy, dissatisfied with our lives. This is according to UCLA neuroscientists. All negative emotions which activate our brain's reward center, those are the ones. They activate your reward center in the brain. Frustration, self-centeredness, guilt, shame, anger, and envy. And that's what makes us cling to them. So we search out the stimuli that lets us have those feelings. It's really counterproductive. But you can use those, according to the neuroscientists, to create an upward spiral. Because this is what Swami Prabhupada always said, our evolution in karma is always going up. We are always going towards God. Often it looks like we're going down because the spiral goes. And it takes a little down, but we never go down as far as we were before. And we're always going higher than we were before. And we can create positivity using those. Okay. And this is where I started looking at, in Syria, a group called the White Hats. How many of you have heard of the White Hats? Okay. They are everyday individuals. They live in one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Bombings take place constantly. And these men decided to use that for their betterment. They became the White Hats. As soon as they hear a bomb go off, they immediately suit up and show up. They run to where the bomb happened. They start immediately saving people. They don't discriminate which religion they are, which group they belong to. They simply save people. Because one of their premises is, for every time we save one life, we save humanity. So these men, they're killed in action. They're family men. They have all the same responsibilities and attachments that every one of us has. They have their own children at home, but they never stop doing what they believe in. So they've actually made a documentary of them now, so you can get it on Netflix and see what they do. But At the time when they made the documentary, over 135 of them had been killed, but they had saved 58,000 people. So it works out. What kind of things can you do to create happiness when you go to work and you walk into your workplace? I don't know what your situation is. What's the first thing you do when you walk into work? What do you do when you walk into work?
I put my lights on, get my coffee ready, put the computer on, the terminal.
Okay. What do you do? Alex?
Walk into class, sit down.
Grab your coffee?
Yeah, grab my coffee. That's always a start.
When I start every single day, I make a cup of coffee in my room and drink it before I even walk out. So, the ways that you can make yourself, 4 rituals that you can use to increase happiness in your life is 1, to think of what the things you're grateful for. They all go together. Gratefulness promotes happiness. That's why the lectures are all kind of together this weekend. I am so grateful that my coffee machine works. One morning, Thursday morning, I arrived Wednesday night, and there was no heat in the house, so we had electric heaters all over keeping the house warm. And I got up, plugged in the hot pot, and blew all the fuses. And I thought, that's not thinking too well. I can drink half warm coffee. But I am grateful every single morning that coffee pot works. Yeah. The days when we've had strong winds in Santa Barbara and there's no power, I'm on the phone with Southern California Edison. Well, how long is it going to take? How long is it going to take to get there? And they're all out there working. I mean, you've got to give it to these people who go out in emergencies in all of our disaster situations like floods and like power outages, and those guys go to work no matter what for our comfort. So, the other thing you can do, find something to be grateful for every day. That's 1. Another one is label your negative emotion. Label it. Give it a name. What are you feeling? I'm feeling frustrated by a situation. I'm feeling like it should have been me, not them. Envious. And according to these neuroscientists, as soon as we label it, we're not so bothered by it. We don't keep thinking about it. Because we have labeled it and we can let it go. I think, I haven't practiced that one too much, but I think it's very true. Because most of us, as long as we can put something in its proper place, we can put it to the side and go on to something else. So if we label anger, I'm angry, but why am I angry? And who am I angry at? Once we label it, it's okay, according to neuroscientists at UCLA. Give it a try, see if it works. The other thing we can do is decide. Just make a decision. So much of our unhappiness is this. Should I do this? Should I do that? If I do this, then this will happen. Well, if I don't get to the coffee shop, then this will happen. And then decide. Even if it's the wrong decision, you'll be able to move along better. And you'll find out it's the wrong decision. You say, okay, I made a mistake, I'll do this one. But you're not going to put yourself in a frustrating situation. for about 10 years, I lived with a nun who could not make a decision to save her life. We would go to a restaurant. She would get the menu. And there would be 4 or 5 of us there, right? And she could not make a decision. Now, I'm the kind that walks in and goes, I'll have that. And she would worry and worry and worry, and I'd order, and she'd say, I'll have that. Because she still couldn't make a decision. And she knew it. And she'd say, I don't even know why I bothered looking at these things. I'll just have what you're having. So, but if we know these things about ourselves and just do it, we're all going to make mistakes. And as Swamiji said, if we fail, fail grandly. And get up and start again. But do it well. Have a real failure. Because then you can rise up. Swami Vivekananda did nothing half-heartedly. Did he?
No. Not at all.
So he said, fail grandly. In your decision making, we're not going to find perfection, okay? You're not ever going to make the perfect decision. So make up your mind that good enough is good enough. And then you can keep moving forward from good enough. Good enough will get better and better as you go along. But don't tie yourself up with emotional hang-ups, blocks that you put in your own way. Swami Pramashananda, he was one of the senior monks from Bangladesh, I believe, and he was instrumental in bringing in a great number of swamis into the order. And there are 2 books written about their compilations of his letters to his monks that he mentored. And the name of the book is Go Forward. Like the old story of this monk who was told to go forward. That was his instruction. He met a holy man, and he said, what should I do? And the holy man said, go forward. And he thought about it, and so he went into the forest. He went forward, and he found a sandalwood forest. Came out, and he hadn't, this was very dear, but he said, but he didn't tell me to stop there. He said, go forward. So he went in and went further and found a gold mine. And he came out, and he said, but he didn't tell me to stop there either. He said, go forward. So he kept going forward till he found a diamond mine. And then the story stops. I don't know what happens after that. But in all of our lives, go forward. Don't go backward and keep repeating the same mistakes you already made. This was one of the things that most appealed to me as a Christian, Puritan American. Vedantists do not believe in sin. Vedanta, as Swami Pravrajika, we have ignorance. Now, ignorance is solvable and correctable. According to the Judeo-Christian tradition, sin, you're just born with it. And you have no hope, basically. But ignorance, well, we're all ignorant in certain areas, and we all have knowledge in other areas. In our main lesson in life, which will learn from your mistakes. There was an old Alcoholics Anonymous saying. We used to have a lot of members who were in Alcoholics Anonymous, and we had a calligrapher in the convent, and they would come in with their little sayings that they wanted calligraphed so they could put them in frames and have them posted all over the house to keep their thinking straight. And one of them was, Now, let's see. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. We make up our minds to suffer. The pain we all have. Everyone will have pain in their life. Physical pain, emotional pain. And we can choose to cope with it or suffer with it. When we suffer with it, we relive it, we think about it, we talk about, oh, I just had a knee replacement, okay? Talk about pain. It really hurts. But you know that if you just do the exercises, it's going to quit. And it'll quit in like 3 or 4 weeks, for the most part. So you can make a choice. I had a friend who had the same surgery and agonized over every step she took and every time she bent her knee, and is still having trouble walking. I had one before and knew that it hurts like crazy and you just have to do it no matter what. And so in a week and a half I was up walking and doing this stuff that I need to do around the convent. Hurt, and I was resting a lot, but you make up your mind you're not going to suffer with it. Emotional pain is the same thing. Am I going to relive it? Am I going to think about it all the time? Am I going to get into a phase of why me, poor me, this hasn't happened to any, what did I do to deserve this? Nothing. You did nothing. It happened. So you can choose not to suffer, and as all of the religions and everyone says, go forward. Learn from it, try not to repeat it, and go forward. Life will always get better. Because if we believe in this upward spiral, which Holy Man told me about, and now the neuroscientists are corroborating it because that makes it real. Having neuroscience tell you it's real. I mean, we know that they can measure things. And so once it's in neuroscience and written in a book, then we know it's true. And they're saying exactly the same thing that Swami Prabhupada told me 50 years ago. Life is an upward spiral. Okay. And many things happen along the way that you think, is it really worth it? Am I really getting anywhere? Because so often we can't tell where we are. And this is where also Vedanta helps us in working in our lives. Even when you feel like you've hit a dead stall, keep at it. Try not to get frustrated. Keep doing what you're doing in the way that you know is right. And soon the stall will stop, and you might make great upward motion. But it may seem like it's forever that it isn't happening. But then time is completely relative too. We're like tiny, when I was 5 years old, oh my God, summer was so short and school was so long. And now everything goes by so fast. It seems to accelerate the older you get. So I know that time is not real. It's all in our imagination. So we decide what we're going to do. We make definite positive choices. And the 3 things again. Now we ask what I'm grateful for, label the negative emotions, and decide on an action. The 4th thing that will make you happy is, and this sounds so totally Southern California. Hugs. Hugs. Don't text people. Talk to them. Go face to face. Put your devices away. Talk to people in person. And yes, human touch makes people happy. Think about it. I mean, any kind of, when people you love give you a hug, don't you feel happy and protected? Sure. Now, in Southern California, it's gone a little overboard. We have the hugging guru, and people come along and they're absolute total strangers, and they give you a big hug, and you just learn to go along with them because that's the way they are. And there is no harm in it. It's actually very benign and very friendly. It means almost nothing in a lot of the Southern California situations, but it's still, they're acknowledging human being to human being. So this is what the neuroscientists decided was one of the things. Human interaction, face-to-face time, not texting and putting a machine between you and your friends. I mean, I think it started, golly, with the telephone when we could call people. But at least we were hearing their real voice. And now, I know I have a smartphone and I rely on texting a great deal because it's easy. And for short messages, okay, but it's still, we all get together when we want to really interact. Now, the reason we do these four things, according to the neuroscientists, is because everything in your life is interconnected. You cannot compartmentalize. We try to. We try to keep work in this space, family in this space. We try to compartmentalize our lives so that we can deal with it. But according to Vedanta, all is Brahman. So there are no compartments. We don't know this, but now the neuroscientists have said all is interconnected. So we'll get there one day. So when we start doing these four practices like gratitude, it improves your sleep. Try it. Just try it. Vedanta says you don't have to take anything on someone's word. They say that you have to experience it yourself. So all of these suggestions, you try. And if it doesn't work, then discard it. If it does work, then keep it. With sleep improvement, all the studies have proved that improves your health, takes away pain, improves your productivity, and improves your relationships. Because you need sleep. That's our body's way of rejuvenating itself. It even reduces pain, emotional and physical. And if you're not in emotional or physical pain, your mood is better. You can get out of bed and be, if not exuberantly happy that it's a new day, at least feeling good. I mean, I traveled with someone who was exuberantly happy as they got up, and I was just like, I can get there with a cup of coffee. It takes a cup of coffee. I haven't gotten into that coffee yet, but then I like it. So, an improved...
That is always there.
Improved mood. That reduces your anxiety and improves your focus and planning. Because if in a good mood, you're not thinking about all the things that are dragging you down. Like you say, you go in, turn on your light, turn on the computer, get your coffee, ready to go. Don't have to worry about anything. Just now if you go in, I should have done this, I should have done that. And then focus and planning, and you all need it in college. You need focus and planning. You really need it. It will help your decision making. Because if you can clearly plan things, you can make a decision to say, okay, I'll do that. I'll go in this direction. This is the upward spiral of happiness, according to the definitive neuroscientist, Alex Korb. Okay. He says that then decision-making reduces anxiety, improves enjoyment because you've stopped worrying. Enjoyment of everything gives you more to be grateful for, which further improves all of it, your happiness. And enjoyment of what you're doing makes you more likely to be exercise. You'll have the time to do it. And to be social, to take time with your friends if you're enjoying. And that will make you happier, according to him. Now, I brought this book, which I'm going to show you. This is a book called Solve for Happy. And this gentleman is the business officer of Google. Highly, highly successful. Financially, a multimillionaire. Loves what he does. Can buy anything he wants. And he was in Dubai when his son needed an emergency operation, and there was a tiny mistake, and his son died on the operating table in like half a minute, 10 minutes. It was not anything anyone could help. And that changed his life drastically because his son was his pride and joy. And he could not do anything to change that. In this book, he said, at that point in my life, I could choose to be devastated and go, why did it happen to me? I'm going to sue the doctors. I'm going to sue the hospital. I'm going to try and he said, and I realized none of it would bring my son back. None of it. So his son had been a very happy person living a life that he enjoyed. He was only 20. And he said, so I made up my mind that I would choose, I would try and do it as my son would have done it. And his son had certain criteria. He said he gave everyone 3 chances. People, if they were negative towards him, he would excuse them the first time. If they continued to be negative, he would excuse them the second time. And if they still continued, on the 3rd time he would tell them, I'm sorry, I can't be around you anymore. I don't like the way you make me feel. He would explain this. And he would have no animosity towards them. It was just, I can't be with you because I don't feel good when you're doing this to me. Which, we all have that choice. He took it further and he analyzed it. He says, we are not this body because this body goes. Eventually it changes all the time. remakes itself, it changes shape, it changes age, and he said, we're not the mind, because our minds change all the time. These are basic religious philosophy. This is basic Patanjali's yoga aphorisms. Basic. But he analyzed it as an engineer would. And this is an interesting little thing that he decided. He said he has all these little happy faces and little things like this. But he said, well, where do we start? We start in a state of confusion. Everything is confusing. We have no clear thoughts. And we allow our thoughts to be influenced by the illusion of events. This is still basic Vedanta because we believe that everything we are experiencing is what we call Maya, an illusion. None of it has a basis, an eternal reality. Then he says we generally, in the state of confusion, it's mostly negative. Then when we concentrate on those negative thoughts, we end up in the state of suffering, which is unhappiness. And at this point, what we have to do is integrate our thoughts and consciously choose the more positive thoughts. But what we generally do at that point is we suspend thought because it can be painful, and we seek diversions and escape. I.e., we go to the movies, we go to parties, we stop thinking about what we're doing and seek external entertainment. And we can stay in that state, but that doesn't get us to the point of happiness. If we integrate our thoughts, then we get to the state of happiness, where we enjoy our lives. And that state of happiness, he says, you actually, because he's a very scheduled man and does life as a financier, he scheduled in entertainment for part of his week, exercise for part of his week, and made sure he did it. And a pleasurable activity every week. Because often we forget to do that, to integrate. We get busy and we think we don't have time for ourselves. Not selfish time, just every person needs a certain amount of pleasure in their life. They need a certain amount of enjoyment. They need time for their friends. And you have to, if you have reached a point where you don't schedule that, then he says schedule it. Make sure you do it. Go to the gym 3 times a week. Or go for that walk that you wanted to do. Go for the hike once a week that you have been putting off because you've been too busy. Once you get to the state of happiness, he says, then you go beyond that. You go to the state of joy, where nothing really disturbs that inner joy that you have. Well, now this also, when I read this book, a devotee gave it to me. She said, read this book. She had her life is really bad. Her son at 17 was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic and really went off the rails, and they've had 2 or 3 years of family disruption, sold the house, marriage almost broke up, the daughter quit speaking. I mean, really disruptive, and they were trying to save their son, and he became 18 and no one could help him because he was an adult. But they have, using Vedanta, treating everything as a gift for self-expansion and realization. She said, I don't know why we have to do this, but if we treat it as a worship, and we treat it as our privilege to do this, then we don't have to suffer. And she found this book and she said, you better read it, it's straight Vedanta. And I was kind of reading and I'm going, well, yes it is, it's very well written. And he talks about, the first thing one he said was our default stage, our default mode when we're born is happiness. He said, you look at any baby, and they are only unhappy when their diapers are wet, they're hungry, or they have a stomachache. All these things can be solved, and you solve them and they're happy again. So he says the default mode of a human being is happiness when we're born. We tend to get tied up and we turn our default mode into unhappiness, where every time we get by ourselves, we start thinking, if not negatively about ourselves, we start putting pressure on ourselves for what we have to do. We start scheduling, but we're basically making ourselves anxious. And he said, all we have to do is change our default mode. Go back to where we started. Now, it took me a while to figure out what a default mode was. Okay, I still can't run a computer very well. I have one. And as Hari will say, I don't know what I'm doing. I really don't. But I have like 4 or 5 things that I can do, and I do those. And if I push the wrong button, it's not my fault. It's really not my fault. But I thought, well, at least this will speak to another generation, the ones who know what he's talking about. Default modes and rebooting. And I honestly don't care how the message gets out there, how you can find the state of joy that is you. Because our basic nature, according to Vedanta and everything, is joy. We are, that is our basic nature. Joy, love, knowledge. That's it. That is what we call Satchitananda. Knowledge, love, and bliss. And that is what we all are. Now he's doing it very, very linearly and telling you how to do it step by step with lots of bullets to remember. You are not the mind. Remember, time is illusory. Time is an illusion. And he's got to remember, which are really good because we all need reminders of this every day. It's easy to get caught up in daily events and to get distracted. As Swami Prabhupada said, we're born with 2 purposes. As when we enter this world as a little human being, our very being wants the senses to go out. We want to see, we want to feel, we want to taste, we want to touch. And all of our senses lead us outward, out of ourselves. The other purpose in life is to go inward and find what's behind that. So, in what I heard when I first heard it was we're trying to get rid of our individualized ego and realize our oneness with the universe. Someone mentioned Viktor Frankl. I encountered that book when I was in college. Of course, we've been reading, it was World War II and all of the concentration camps, and then Vietnam War and all of this, and then Martin Luther King. And what are people looking for? And Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, was the first book that made sense to me. because he said what we were looking for was that divinity within us, the love. And the people that survived these situations were people who did not look to the external. They looked to the internal, and they found that core of divinity. I put it as divinity. I don't think Viktor Frankl did, but that's what I saw. They're searching for meaning in life, not for success, not for longevity, not for anything else. Why am I here? And that's what religions throughout the ages have addressed. What am I doing here? Why am I here? The Ramana Maharshi, who am I? Now, you can try and answer that question. Nuns have a hard time answering that question. Someone says, what's your name? And we go into identity crisis. You go, which name do they know me by? And you have 3 or 4, right? So, and you go, which one do they know me by? And you're sitting there thinking, and the person that just says, what's your name, is going, man, they're stupid. They don't even know their own name. It gets to be interesting. And then you realize, I'm not my name. I've been 4 or 5 names. And our family gave nicknames. So that made it even worse. I mean, who am I? I don't know.
Try to laugh like that.
Who am I? Anyway, you know, I mean, look, it was so bad. We had one nun who was, and this was a long time ago, very, very shy, painfully shy. And she was the nuns were standing in a line, and they were to introduce themselves. And our nun, who was painfully shy, and her name was Pravrajika, said, and I'm Pravrajika. And there was Pravrajika standing right next to her, and she said, I'm Pravrajika too.
Oh my.
What to say? So, and are you your mind? Do you still want the same things you wanted at 5? Same things you wanted at 10? Same things you wanted at 45? Do you think the same things? I mean, I mean, I can't even remember what I thought half the time. But, I mean, I was in college in 1961. Okay, 1961 we had, as I say, Martin Luther King, Vietnam War, women's lib, you name it, we were revolting against it. And we were, you know, doing everything. Now, where were we going? Who knew? But we didn't want to be where we were. Now, if we'd had some kind of direction, everyone was truly idealistic. They all had an idea of something grander than what was. But we didn't have a real direction. And as Swami Swahananda, the convents and monasteries of Vedanta got a great number of an influx of monks and nuns during the 70s. The Beatles discovered Eastern religion. And so everyone had to do Eastern religion. Now, we haven't had a great influx of monks and nuns since the 70s. And he says, and everyone said, well, what happened, Swami? Why did they all come in then? And he says, it was the fashion. Sex, drugs, and Eastern religion. Some stuck. And and then he stopped and think about it. This is what he saw as an Indian Swami coming over. And he went, yeah, he's reduced it to its common denominator. It was true. Everyone was trying everything, and Eastern religion was right on everyone had to try it. Now, it was the only one that made sense to me. As soon as I walked in and I heard we all worship the same God, I went, well, of course. There can't be 2 or 3 gods. Of course there's only one God. But I was the one who went through all of the Sunday school, all of the catechism classes, everything in the Episcopal Church, and at the end of high school they said, now what are the 3 major Christian religions? And I answered with great assurity, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Christianity. And they all looked at me and went, Buddhists and Hindus aren't Christians. And I went, of course they are. They worship God, don't they? And we're not going to put them out of the whole thing just because they live in a different part of the world. So I missed a couple concepts there. But, and I wasn't stupid. I really was. Very bright. I had certain blind spots. I was, in the accelerated classes and everything, and went into experimental college, so it was going to be run as on the Oxonian of, they were trying out a new college where I was, where they were going to do it as advisors and you did your own curriculum. And that was way back then. So I will have to say I wasn't stupid. But I did have this huge blind spot where, of course, there's only one God. How can there be 2? It was totally incomprehensible to me. And good people are good people in every country, in every walk of life. You live a moral life, and live selflessly for others, doing what you can, taking care of your family and yourself, but then beyond that, taking care of everyone you meet. That's not the sole property of any one religion. In fact, it's basic, in one way, it is the sole property of all religions. So, how to be happy? Can you think of...
Don't think about it.
Hmm?
Don't think about it.
That's true. One of the things that... Can you all think of one thing that makes you really happy? One place where you're really happy. One situation where you don't feel stress, you don't feel anxiety, you just feel at ease. They're doing so many studies on it now. Every time I go around, there's a new book on happiness. Matthew Ricard has done one. The Dalai Lama, when asked, what's the most important thing you can do in human life? And he said, be happy. You help the entire universe if you're happy. It's like these white hats, if we save one soul, we have saved humanity. You don't have to go out and look for a huge cause to take up. Just take care of the people you know, the people who are in your, in our orbit, the ones we run into. You're not going to solve Syria from here. All we do with that, we pray for those situations, that they alleviate themselves. But physically and mentally, what can we do? We can send some money, we can send some support for disasters. But realistically speaking, unless we get on a bus and go somewhere, we're not going to be doing anything except making ourselves unhappy and frustrated. when the hurricanes happened, I know there was a group of people in Santa Barbara who were in rehab, and they gathered sleeping bags and all kinds of things and got on a bus and went to where the hurricane was, because they felt very, very strongly about people not having homes and they didn't have money. So they just gathered these things and went. Now that's something physically you can do, but is that realistic for everyone? No. So we do what we can. And we don't beat ourselves up for not being able to do more. We do exactly what we can. Our particular thing at our convent, animals seem to come into our orbit. Abandoned animals. And so we have had an array through the years. Right now we only have 3 cats and 2 dogs. But all basically dumped animals, or they're all rescues. So we do what we can for people, for animals, for whatever beings that come along. Try and be there for them. If someone calls you and they're having a hard time, take the time to talk to them, or meet them for coffee and let them just unload. Oftentimes that's all someone needs, is someone to talk to. It's not even like you can solve their problems for them. But if you can listen to them and let them know they're not by themselves in that, you'll feel 100% better about yourself. And they'll feel at least 50% better about themselves, because someone's sharing their problem with them. There's all kinds of things we can do, and which increase our happiness. And you can do it at work. Lots of times people come in and they snap or they do something and you react. And if we take the time not to react, but to say, maybe not say anything, but then go a little later, everything okay? Is everything okay? Because sometimes they've had something that happened in the morning that's put them off. They had some kind of a situation that arose, or something happened. And they'll just kind of go, no, it really isn't. Because you take the time to be interested in them. I think I need some feedback. Does anyone else have any feedback about this? I feel like I'm talking too much.
Today in the today when we are hello. Today when we were buying groceries, Mom, the guy at the salesperson, or the guy at the counter, was very quiet, and that kid was the kid next to us, putting stuff in ours, and you looked at the person and you said, how are you? Everything is okay? And then I was thinking, oh my God, I should have, because I was standing there and thinking something, the guy is not talking, not even looking at us. So I was thinking, I just learned that from now on I will do that, to initiate talking, and then this guy started talking and putting the things back, the boy was put there. So, yeah, that's...
Well, I think one of the things, people are in work situations that are repetitive, demeaning, and no one acknowledges them. We take them for granted.
Yes.
Salespeople particularly grocery cashiers, they get, everyone coming through. what did they get? 15? They've got more than 15 things in their cart. Well, I mean, that long, and then do this line, and what's happening? And they get this kind of, it's your fault they're getting through this line. So if we accept the belief that every person is a manifestation of divinity, and their very core is the divine, then try to acknowledge everyone. Just to say hello, even the homeless, even the ones who are like really gnarly, just to, even a nod, just to acknowledge them as a human being makes you feel better about yourself, because you have acknowledged God in that person. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be best friends. You don't have to take them home with you. Okay? But it's easy in a grocery line. Just say, hi, how are you doing today? Looks like it's really busy. And they feel better being acknowledged and you thanking them for helping you. The other ones that I always find that cheer up a lot better. In airports, when they have people inside cleaning the bathrooms, I always try and tell them thank you. Thanks a lot for keeping this clean, because I'd really hate to walk into it if it were really dirty. But just to acknowledge people, acknowledge that they're a productive part of humanity. It doesn't take anything on our part. It doesn't take anything away from us. In fact, it gives us something. But it's a very tiny habit that you can cultivate and see how you feel about yourself. One of our nuns used to get really angry with me because she said, God, you can walk into a bathroom and make friends. Why are you talking to everyone? She's doing the same thing now. Hi, gee, you look a little sad today. Is everything okay? It doesn't hurt. And in most cases, it doesn't create a situation that you can't get out of. Once in a while it does. You gotta take that one as the once in a while. But you will find that it makes you feel better. We do a monthly service at a homeless shelter. And for the last 5 months, we've had a family there that none of us know why they're there. They don't fit the profile. It's a homeless shelter prioritizing women with children who would normally be on the street, and then families with children. It's a safe place for children to be, and it's church run in Santa Barbara. But we've had this one family, and they're out now, they got a place to live. First, they were white. Second, they were well educated. Third, they were, he didn't have a job, which was really odd, because a lot of the people in our homeless shelter, most are Hispanic, and they do have jobs, but they can't get the first and last month together. It takes them 5 or 6 months to get that. And it's against the rules for us to ask them why they're there. So all of us were speculating. And according to Swami Prabhupada, do not speculate. Don't ever speculate. But we never quit. And we never figured out why they were there. Someday I'll ask the people. But it's very strange when you have these things that we always talk to them. Very nicely educated, very nicely mannered. It seemed just an anachronism that they were even in the homeless shelter, but obviously something had happened. Who knows what? And it could be the same as with every other family. They lost their lease or something, and they just couldn't get the rent together. Who knew? It's very interesting, but that was very frustrating for me not to be able to ask them, how come you're here? What happened? You have to learn sometimes to live with that frustration.
Why couldn't you ask them?
Against the rules of the shelter. No one can mention their religion. They put up one sign, because every night is a different church. And they put up a sign that says, which church is feeding you tonight? But you can't tell them anything about your religion. You're not to proselytize there. You're not to change their faith. You're just there to serve and do your service. Because the other places we have in Santa Barbara, like the Rescue Mission, which is very Christian, and they like you to go to prayer groups and that kind of thing, or they're a couple of the churches let people in the evenings, and that's also church oriented. But this one, all the churches get together and we've all agreed, okay, no religion in this, just service. So, and it works. It does work. It's been so long since I've been in a work situation that I don't even know what the frustrations in work are these days.
It's all the same. It's all the same.
It is? Okay.
They don't change.
They don't change.
We are supposed to use the microphone whenever we are talking for the public. If it is mumbling to myself, we don't.
You did use it.
So,
You're profitable.
One question.
Bring it
Which happiness is more effective? Doing service to God or doing service to mankind?
they're one and the same. Service to mankind is service to God. Because mankind is God made manifest.
So directly doing, what I mean is doing service directly to mankind, it goes to God. So that happiness always stays.
Yes. Yeah. But it doesn't go to God. It is God. It is God. Every single person you see is a manifestation of God. So when you serve them, you serve God. It's like the saying in the Bible, he who serves the least serves me. And it's sometimes, it's something we can say, but to actually get to the point where you see that every person really is and has the same divine nature that you have. Everyone has the same desires in life. We all basically have the same feelings. We have the same aspirations. We manifest them differently. We express them differently. But when you get down to the basics, human beings want to be loved, and they want to love. Now, there was an old song, looking for love in all the wrong places, looking for love in all the wrong places. And I used to read that, sing that, and I thought that it's true. But what we're looking for is love. And as long as we're looking outside, we'll be disappointed. We have to find it inside, in our own hearts first, and then we see it in every other heart. So we look inside ourselves to find that love that we can give to people or that we can express. You have to be happy and find fulfillment here before you can manifest it outwardly. So that's what the whole purpose of trying to better ourselves is. Trying to find that, trying to manifest it, trying to show it, trying to experience it, to where we honestly, it's not an intellectual practice anymore. It's a heartfelt realization. And that's what, I mean, that's the whole thing. Why take up religion? Why take up, I mean, if you're going to be perfectly satisfied with the external world, why would you look for more? If everything in the external world satisfies you and you're not disappointed, then go for it. But I think that if you're like most humans, and dogs and cats, you will find that somehow it doesn't satisfy. There's always some little thing missing, or you think it should be more. It should be more. Because every external desire, sensual desire that we try, taste. Today we went to a museum. I'm addicted to looking at paintings. I won't say addicted. I enjoy it. I love it. But I always want to see more. Every place I go, I like to go to another museum and see what else they have to offer. It's not a desire that you can satisfy, because there's always more to see. I won't say that I'm going to have nights of sleepless nights over not seeing all the museums in the world. But I enjoy seeing the ones I can see. It's a great fad in Southern California now. Everyone's a foodie. You're trying to find the right, just the perfect combination of everything so that you get taste right. But it's never going to be right. There's always going to be a new one coming along. But to dedicate your life to that, I mean, I like to eat like everyone, and I like it to taste good. It's not something I'm going to dedicate my life to. But I do find that dedicating my life to finding the inner peace and joy, that's worth going for me. That really is. Now, what I do on the outside in the world doesn't matter really, as long as I know that that's where I'm heading. You can do any job, and you can do it well, and you can do it happily. If you keep the one major goal in mind, the major goal being whatever you set it as. For me, it was finding God. When I read the Sermon on the Mount when I was a child, and they said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they can see God." I went, that's what I want. I want to see God. Now, I still believe that's possible. I really and truly do. And it's still what I want. So.
Sure.
It's on.
So when you want to see God and you want it so much, do you sometimes think you see God because your mind wants it so much that you envision it there, or do you really think you see it because it is there. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes.
Yes, I know what you mean. I think it's possible to see God. Maybe not with these external eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But Swami Prabhavananda, who is my teacher, was a mystic. And he saw God. And he walked with God. And I know it's possible. And was it a figment of his mind? I don't know. Because his very being was an expression of that. And I think if it's a mental thing, your entire being does not manifest it. But his entire being manifested it. He lived, when I knew him, he was very old, and he kind of lived in that halfway zone between this world and that world, and you never knew exactly where his foot was. But it was extremely inspiring to be able to have that blessing to see it. So,
do you think we have to be in that state, where
No.
they're halfway in
No.
or halfway?
he used to tell us all the time, it's a temperamental thing. It has nothing to do with realization or spiritual growth. He says temperamentally you're a mystic or you're not. And that's it. No. Character change, life change is what is spiritual growth. Mysticism is an entirely different thing. It's just one expression of it. Personally, I'm drawn to the mystical aspect. I don't know if temperamentally I have it in me. It's what inspires me. Now, I've known great swamis who temperamentally were not mystics, but their very being exuded spirituality. They never had a vision, they never, that was not their temperament. And it had nothing to do with their growth spiritually. So, I know that anything is possible. But somehow that saying in the Sermon on the Mount really caught my attention when I was young, as did Cambodia and Australia, with about the same intensity. When you're 7 or 8, things hit you, and some you hang on to. So, it's who knows why we do what we do. I'm sure you have had. They often say that when you first take up spiritual life and you get your mantra and you start meditating, that oftentimes you have certain experiences that happen. Not mystical, but experiences that give you encouragement on the way. And then they stop. And you go, well, how come I'm not having them all the time? And that's when the self-effort comes in. You get a little grace and then you make the effort. And I think most people have experienced that kind of thing, where you get encouragement. Encouragement from like-minded people, or from your meditations, or from whatever. But you get encouragement, very encouraging things that this is possible. And then, as I say, somehow they don't happen quite as often for quite a while. But you keep making the effort and you keep working. It's time for Vespers. It's time for arati. I have to keep my time schedule, don't I? You're in charge.
We can continue for some time.
So, but I do believe that this is, I would not have taken a monastic life if I didn't believe that at least I was pursuing the path that suited me. Because I truly, absolutely never thought of becoming a nun. And it took me almost 7 years before I would admit that I was a nun. Most of the time people would say, what do you, oh, I live at the Vedanta Society. I hadn't gotten it reconciled in here. I wasn't sure I was going to, so, but, yeah. But we all have our own reasons for taking up a pursuit for our spirituality and to know ourselves. Oftentimes it comes from, I think, a feeling of unease. I won't say you're unhappy, but you just keep, there's that nagging thing that says there has to be more. There's more to this than just this. And that's, I think, the reason we take up a spiritual journey. There has to be something more than just this. I didn't know it until I met Swami Prabhavananda. I really didn't know that some gaping hole was missing. And as soon as I saw him, I went, yeah, he knows who he is, and he's completely and totally there for everyone. And I want to do that. Can I learn it? Because I thought, learn things. I always believed you could learn things, except what the 3 Christian religions were. I still don't know. That's the truth. I still don't know what the 3 major Christian religions are. I have no idea. And I'm not sure I'm ever going to know. But who cares? Anyway. But what I saw with him, I knew that I was missing. So, as I say, Hari, you're in charge. You're the master of ceremonies. We have Arati now.